Hello everyone, and welcome to my lore breakdown for Act 2. I've learned a lot since the last video, and this one holds a special place in my heart. The sheer amount of information to uncover and to connect and piece together in this act is truly incredible, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without Kerzahd and Nemorga, who helped me fact-check my script, so thank you so much to those guys. In this video, I'll guide you through the second act of Path of Exile 2, and I'll pause at key moments to dive deeper into the factions, characters, and historical references that shape the story. It's a slightly different approach from what I've done in the last video, so let me know your thoughts. For now, grab a warm drink, settle in, and let me tell you all about the story of Path of Exile 2, Act 2. You arrive at the outskirts of the Vastiri Plains, the barren landscape stretching before you. The Hooded One remarks on the path forward, directing you to find a Maraketh caravan to guide you through the plains. These plains are harsh and have a long history tied to the Maraketh people, a history shaped by their rigid traditions and resilience in the face of changing empires. This is a good moment for me to tell you more about the Maraketh. They are a long-standing faction in Rayclast, with a history stretching back hundreds of years. Their most notable involvement in recorded history was during the Purity Rebellion of 1333, led by Templar Vol. At that time, Deshar, a prominent Maraketh leader, or Sekema as the Maraketh say, allied with the rebellion in exchange for assistance reclaiming the Vastiri Plains from the Empire. This alliance proved successful, and as a result, the Maraketh regained control of the Vastiri Plains, a region they continue to hold in Path of Exile 2. At the outpost, signs of travel and trade are everywhere. A signpost welcomes travelers, highlighting the land of 7 waters and its bountiful trade, but reminds all to have a toll ready for passage. Nothing in life is free. The Hooded One explains that the Maraketh are people bound by their shared beliefs and strict adherence to tradition. This discipline has allowed them to endure where others have fallen. Their caravans, essential for navigating the plains, are also vital for protecting their culture and ensuring survival in these unforgiving lands. Now, to keep things straightforward, it's worth noting that the Maraketh share a history of opposition to imperial rule, much like the Ezamites featured in Act 1. Additionally, they hold a solemn vow to seek out and destroy corruption wherever it arises, a commitment that directly ties into the events unfolding in Path of Exile 2, with the Beast. As you navigate the outpost, you meet Zarka, one of our main characters for Act 2. She's an elder who introduces herself as a keeper of tales. Her words are direct. The caravan cannot proceed because Hyenic raiders are harassing the trade route. The Maraketh are stranded until this problem is resolved. If you are to continue east in pursuit of Oriana and the Beast, you must deal with the raiders. You set out into the Vastiri Plains. The path to the raiders is littered with signs of their activity, plundered goods, and remnants of violent skirmishes. The Hyenic raiders reveal themselves as more than bandits. Their movements are coordinated, their strength greater than expected. At their center stands Wrathbreaker, a towering figure. When Wrathbreaker finally falls, the Hyenic threat dissolves, and the trade route is now cleared. Returning to the outpost, you are greeted by once again Zarka, who acknowledges your efforts. She offers you a place in the Ardura Caravan, recognizing your value as a Jinga, an outsider who has earned respect through action. Remember that word. It's said quite a few times during Act 2, and it refers to you, the outsider. The caravan is now ready to continue its journey across the plains. I've just mentioned the Ardura, and I want to pause here for a second and give you a bit more context, as it can get a bit confusing with all these weird names. The Ardura are one of the Akaras, which are the tribal factions of the Maraketh. They embody the ideals of unity, honor, and resilience in the Vastiri Desert. They trace their lineage back to the earliest days of the Maraketh people and have played a central role in maintaining the traditions and survival of their people. The Ardura Akara was formed during the Winter of the World, a 1,000-year ice age that nearly obliterated the early Maraketh. During this era, survival meant strict discipline and the forging of unshakable bonds amongst tribes. The Ardura emerged as one of the first organized Akaras, uniting smaller nomadic groups under a shared code of conduct. Their leadership helped establish the traditions that would come to define the Maraketh as a whole. The Ardura are led by a Sekema, a position granted the strongest and most capable individual of the Akara. So Sekema means a leader. So did we all get that? An Akara is a tribal faction of the Maraketh, and this tribal faction is called the Ardura. And the Ardura are led by a Sekema, right? And we are joining the Ardura Caravan. So one of the most defining moments in Ardura history came after the defeat of the Beast in Highgate. This happens in Path of Exile 1. That's right, this isn't the first time that the Beast has brought chaos to the lands of Rayclast. Most of the story from Path of Exile 1 revolves around the Beast as well. The only thing you need to know at this point is that the Beast has already been a huge problem for Rayclast in the past, but has been defeated by an exile. The Ardura joined other Akaras in a solemn vow to seek out and destroy corruption wherever it might arise, so that such an event would never have to happen again. This commitment became central to their identity, and they view it as both a duty and a birthright. They're very proud of this. This vow ensures that the Ardura remain vigilant, ready to combat any force, whether mortal or divine, that threatens the balance of Rayclast. It also positions them as natural allies in the fight against Oriana and the corruption she spreads. As the caravan sets out, Zarka shares her insight into the Maraketh way of life. She speaks of the history of the Vastiri Plains, the ancient struggles that shaped their traditions, and the enduring strength of her people. Her tales weave the story of Nesima, a blind warrior whose strength and resolve became a symbol of hope for the Maraketh. These stories, passed down through generations, serve as a guide for the present. This is a good moment to talk about the Faridun, or the Faridun, as Zarka mentions that Nesima was adopted by them and eventually turned around and murdered her adoptive tribe, which she's very excited about. So let's talk about the Faridun. The Faridun's origins and history are deeply intertwined with the rigid traditions of the Maraketh. They are not an independent culture, but rather a byproduct of the Maraketh's unyielding pursuit of strength and mostly purity. For centuries, the Maraketh have practiced strict codes that cast out individuals deemed weak, unfit, or otherwise incompatible with their societal ideals. These outcasts, including infants abandoned to the desert, seldom perished as intended. Instead, many were rescued by others who have been similarly exiled. These outcasts became the Faridun. Their bitterness towards the Maraketh for their rejection created a simmering hatred that passed from one generation to the next. One of the most significant figures from this period was a man named Jamanra. Now, you've got to remember that name, and it'll come back shortly. Jamanra was a charismatic leader who sought to unify the Faridun and assert their claim as rightful Maraketh. Jamanra's ideas were revolutionary for the Faridun, as he argued they were not outcasts, but true heirs to the Maraketh legacy. His efforts caused significant turmoil as he openly challenged the Maraketh's authority. His rebellion was ultimately crushed, and his honorless death became a cautionary tale for both Faridun and Maraketh alike. Though defeated, Jamanra's ideals did not die with him. Among the Faridun, he became a symbol of defiance and hope, a figure who proved they could challenge the Maraketh dominance. The Maraketh, on the other hand, viewed him, of course, as a dangerous extremist who had to be erased from history, and erased they did. Now that you understand a bit more about the Faridun, let's go back to the present moment and the Caravan. Shambrin, a blind merchant and former warrior, adds her perspective to Maraketh as one herself. She reflects on the Maraketh values, emphasizing their beliefs in honor and discipline. And despite her blindness, she remains determined to serve her people. Her presence on the Caravan offers a reminder that strength comes in many forms. Although you might be taken aback by her comments on Faridun, she is not a fan, to say the least. The Hooded One speaks to you of the beast's path through the desert, twisting the land and awakening horrors beneath the sand. The Countess Oriana has brought this corruption to the Vastiri Plains, and the Caravan's journey has become a mission to uncover her allies and halt her plans. The desert stretches ahead, promising more challenges yet to come. On the Caravan, you also meet Sekema Asala, the leader of the Ordura Caravan. Now, as a note here, so you don't get confused, her name is Asala, and her title as leader is Sekema. Asala's authority is evident, her words sharp and deliberate. She does not concern herself with your origins or past, only with your capabilities. As a proven ally in battle, thanks to your help with the hyenas, you are welcome to remain under her banner, provided you uphold the Caravan's honor. You then share the urgency of your mission. When you explain it to her, Asala listens carefully. She confirms that corruption has indeed returned to the Vastiri Plains. Strange occurrences have unsettled the region. Creatures twisting into unnatural forms, the dead rising from the sands, and ancient horrors stirring. These events point out to the beast's influence, spreading through the land under Oriana's guidance. The Maraketh, bound by their duty to eradicate corruption, as I mentioned early on, will continue the hunt alongside you. Asala explains the traditions of her people, drawing a sharp contrast between the Maraketh enduring discipline and the weakness she sees in the empires that have fallen around them. Her role as Sekema, the leader, is not one of inherited power but earned leadership, supported by the faith and respect of her people. She agrees to guide the Caravan along the Beast Trail, leaving the choice of direction to you and the Hooded One. Now, we should probably talk about what pulls this Caravan along. The slaves. Slaves pull the immense structure forward. The Hooded One remarks on the practice, acknowledging its necessity in a land where resources are scarce and prisoners of war cannot simply be kept alive without purpose. They must be used. Yet there is unease in his tone, a conflict between pragmatism and morality. The Hooded One also reflects on Asala's resolve, likening her to a figure from his distant past. Now, I don't want to reveal too much right now, but this is important for later, so keep in mind that he has a connection to this land. He notes Asala's drive and capacity for greatness, traits that align with the urgency of the task ahead. Shambrin herself speaks of Asala's leadership, recalling her strength and determination from battles past. Despite the hardships endured by the Ordura, Asala's guidance has kept them united and surviving. With the Caravan's resources and Asala's leadership, the pursuit of the beast continues. The Caravan moves towards the quarry in the hills of Madun, a site said to harbor the Faridun. Upon arrival, the land is eerily silent, with no signs of life. Corpses, some fresh and others long decayed, litter the area, accompanied by creatures that bear the unmistakable marks of corruption. The quarry is no longer a place of labor, but a battleground, consumed by unnatural forces. Something to note here is that all over the quarry are parts meant to be used to build a Faridun caravan, like the one you traveled with. What are they up to? As you explore further, a piece of propaganda lies among the ruins. Authored by Jamanra himself, the writing reveals a message of defiance and unity, calling the Faridun to reclaim their identity as Maraketh. It speaks of rebellion, strength, and the hope of one day rebuilding the city of Keth. This is the jewel of Vastiri. The descent into the quarry brings increasing signs of corruption, as well as signs that people were locked inside the quarry. Probably sacrificed. At the very depths of the quarry, you find Rudja, the Dread Engineer. This is one of the first bosses of Act 2, and her mind has been consumed. Her words a jumble of madness as she attacks without hesitation with a homemade flamethrower of some sorts. The battle is grueling, of course. I died many times, her form combining mechanical precision with unrelenting aggression. She loves fire, that's for sure. When she falls, her final words for the king linger, heavy with implication. She's obviously talking about Jamanra, but why should she? He is long dead. Or is he? Nearby, a cage holds a lone survivor, a young Faradun woman named Risu. She is emaciated but alive, and her gratitude is tempered by wariness. She identifies herself as a Faradun defector, abandoned by her people for opposing the growing madness within their ranks. She speaks of Jamanra's plan and the Countess Oriana's role in bringing the beast to the Faradun. The horror of their alliance is clear as Risu describes the Dreadnought, a massive war caravan, and the beast, kept alive to feed on the honored dead of the Maraketh. Risu's insights are invaluable. She explains the dynamics of the Faradun and their long-standing bitterness towards the Maraketh, which I spoke about. Indeed, the culture of the Faradun is seeped into being the complete opposite of the Maraketh in all ways. Maraketh are rather colorful and sometimes barely clothed, while the Faradun wear dark grey, black tones, and even wear heavy metal masks, in the starkest contrast to the Maraketh. Her defection is not a betrayal in her eyes, but an act of salvation for those who cannot see the path of destruction Jamanra has chosen. That's right, somehow Jamanra is back from the dead, although we know now that that's because of corruption. She shares her belief that the beast's corruption amplifies existing desires, turning old grudges into all-consuming hatred. And that's why this hatred between the Faradun and the Maraketh is the perfect emotional food for the beast to thrive. But this is also very similar to what happened in Act 1. Anyway, back at the caravan, Asala listens to Risu's account with measured scrutiny. The ardorous Sakema acknowledges the danger posed by Jamanra, but warns that Risu's survival depends on the truth of her words. After all, she is a Faradun, and there's nothing more than a Maraketh hates than a Faradun. The Hooded One reflects on the Faradun, calling them a shadow of the Maraketh, formed from the unwanted and abandoned, yet destined to return with vengeance. Shambrin, though skeptical, shows an understanding of the bitterness driving the Faradun's rebellion. It all came from somewhere, after all. The caravan, now armed with Risu's knowledge, prepares to continue the hunt. The trail of corruption leads next to the Halani Gates, a site of strategic importance and likely the next stage in Jamanra's plans. So what do we know at this point? Well, Oriana came through Vastiri, resurrected the rebel leader Jamanra, corrupted his thoughts with the beast, and made the Faradun build them a caravan of impressive measure called the Dreadnought, in order to travel to Deshar, the sacred city of the dead, and feed the beast on the honored dead of the Maraketh. Now you might be asking, what's so special about Deshar? Well, let me tell you a bit more about the city itself. Deshar, which is the sacred city of the dead, is a revered site in Maraketh culture. It is distinguished by its sky burial towers, where the bodies of the most honored Maraketh are exposed to the elements, symbolizing their return to nature and unity with the wind and sand. Only those who have proven their strength, honor, or wisdom in life are granted burial in its spires, reflecting the strict traditions of their society. For those deemed unworthy of burial in Deshar, a tragic tradition unfolds. They leap from the city's heights to the dunes below, seeking an approximation of honor in death. Absolutely brutal. All of this makes a perfect buffet for the beast. The caravan halts before the Halani Gates. It's an imposing barrier now under Faradun control. The gates are sealed. The enemy's intentions are clear: prevent the Maraketh from interfering with their plans. Risu confirms Jamanra's control, explaining that the gates serve as a defense for his operations. She offers knowledge of a hidden route, Traitor's Passage, a relic of betrayal long buried in Maraketh's history. named after the betrayal of Sekema Balbala centuries ago. The passage provides a way forward, though its legacy is steeped in dishonor. Sekema Asala evaluates the situation, acknowledging the necessity of the passage to bypass the gates. She assigns you the task of infiltrating the Faradun stronghold, stressing the importance of precision, secrecy, which is hilarious considering I went in there with my two-handed mace and killed everyone. Anyway, her frustration with Jamanra's actions, particularly his desecration of sacred Maraketh burial practices, underscores the weight of the mission. Before entering the passage, Shambrin requests your assistance. She speaks of Balbala, a Maraketh Sekema who betrayed her people generations ago. Now let me tell you a bit more about Balbala. She's quite interesting. Balbala was a once trusted member of her Akara. She turned traitor for the allure of Welakath, a mythical elixir rumored to grant immense power. Her betrayal took the form of leading a band of foreign warriors through hidden paths to the summit of the Halani Gates, the Akara stronghold. Now, caught off guard, her sisters were mercilessly slaughtered to the last woman. And her reward? Not the promised elixir, but a spear through her gut, delivered by the very bandits she had allied with. There, in the passage of her treachery, she met her end, a stark and unforgiving tale of deceit and its ultimate cost. Balbala didn't die, though. The wise women of that time devised a ritual of binding, sealing Balbala's soul into a jinn, a punishment intended to last 1,000 years as atonement for her treachery. The ritual was as much a warning as it was a sentence, meant to preserve the memory of her betrayal. Yet the sands of time have stretched her imprisonment far beyond its original intent. Zarka believes thousands of years have passed since that judgment, and while the weight of her actions has softened in the telling, the location of her confinement has been lost to history. It's our job to find it. Shambrin urges you to find Balbala and end her torment, a task long overdue. With this quest given to you, you make your way through Traitor's Passage. The deeper you venture, the more hostile the environment becomes, with remnants of ancient traps and corrupted creatures guarding the path. The closer one gets to Balbala, the more seals are found on the walls as well, making sure she can't escape on her own. At the heart of the passage, you confront Balbala, now a djinn, consumed by centuries of suffering. The battle is fierce, but you ultimately bring her torment to an end. Returning to the caravan, you share news of Balbala's release. Shambrin reflects on her redemption, suggesting that her spirit may now serve a greater purpose, which she does, as you'll see Balbala again once you tackle your trial of ascendancy. No spoilers for now. Zarka interprets these events through the lens of Maraketh tradition, emphasizing the need to honor even the most painful aspects of their past. Now, with the passage cleared, you ascend to the top of the gates, and this is when Asala joins you. With her, you fight through the Faradun forces, dismantling their defenses and unlocking 2 gates manually. There's 3 of them. The corruption, however, has already weakened the 3rd gate, providing a path for the caravan. As you push forward, Jamanra himself appears, wielding newfound power. His confrontation with you and Asala is brief, but definitely intense. His words dripping with disdain for the Maraketh. Realizing he won't win this fight, he chooses to retreat, controlling the sands to cover his escape. The caravan regroups as the sandstorm Jamanra conjures halts any immediate pursuit. Asala vows to consult Zarka for a way to counter the sorcery. The Hooded One reflects on Oriana's role in Jamanra's resurrection, noting that her use of corruption is a calculated step in her larger plan. Zarka recounts a tale of the Horn of the Vastiri, a relic said to control the winds. She suggests the possibility of reconstructing it to dispel the storm, pointing to the need for guidance from Asala and further exploration of Maraketh history. The horn itself was wielded by a legendary warrior named Orbala. To clear the sandstorm, you must reconstruct this horn. Well, you think that will help anyway. Orbala is one of the most revered figures in the history of the Maraketh. She is celebrated as both a mortal hero and a divine figure. Her story begins in an age of hardship, when the Maraketh were battling the necromancer Suresh, a master of undead armies and sandstorms. After a little more digging, I found that Suresh was a Faradun reject who explored the concept of intrinsic darkness, later raising undead through Rayclass before his death. To protect her people, Orbala undertook an extraordinary quest to master the elements: water, fire, and the power of earth. Her journey took her to Keth, the Mastodon Badlands, and the Valley of Titans, where she overcame formidable trials to claim these elemental forces. With these elements, Orbala created the Horn of the Vastiri, a legendary artifact that could command the winds themselves. During the decisive battle against Suresh, Orbala sounded the horn, scattering the necromancer's storms and allowing the united Akaris to claim victory. This act of heroism earned her the title of Sekema of Sekemas, the highest honor amongst the Maraketh, and later she ascended to divinity as Garukan, the Queen of the Winds. As a goddess, Garukan symbolized the strength, unity, and adaptability of the Maraketh. However, her divinity came at a cost. The faith and perception of her followers transformed her into an icon, eroding the humanity she once possessed. Despite this, her legacy remains deeply ingrained in Maraketh culture. Her exploits, such as the creation of the Horn of the Vastiri and her leadership during the Maraketh Golden Age, are recounted in stories passed down through generations. This is an important point in our research in the lore of Path of Exile. I'll keep it simple for now, but any human has the capability of ascending to godhood, driven by ambition, built up by their adoration of their people. A mortal can rise to prominence and transcend, casting away their mortality to become an immortal god. It's really good stuff. Let's get back to the horn. The horn itself, though lost to time, remains a symbol of hope against overwhelming odds. Retracing Orbala's journey to recreate this artifact is seen as both a practical endeavor to combat corruption and a spiritual act that reaffirms the Maraketh values of perseverance and unity. Orbala's life and deeds continue to inspire the Maraketh as they face new challenges, just as she did in her time. Guided by Zarka's stories and Asala's direction, the caravan embarks on a path that takes you through the ancient ruins of Keth, the Mastodon Badlands, and the Valley of Titans. The journey begins in Keth, once a thriving city known as the City of Seven Waters. The entrance bears a message of past splendor, but the city lies in ruins, swallowed by time and sand. Beneath the surface, remnants of wealth and faith linger, golden artifacts scattered amongst the crumbling structures. As you delve deeper, the air grows heavy with corruption. You encounter Azarian, a monstrous figure whose form and mind are twisted by bitterness and the beast's influence, as well as his mother, the water goddess. After a brutal confrontation with Azarian, he falls. I'll tell you a little more about those two now. The water goddess was once a mortal leader in the city of Keth, and she ascended to divinity through the faith of her people in her. Her connection to water symbolized life and prosperity, but her transformation into a deity came at the cost of her mortal ties. She abandoned her son, Azarian, believing him to have died, a decision rooted in her mortal frailty. I just want to be clear here, she abandoned her son before she became a deity. Azarian survived, but was left to endure a harsh life among the Faradun. This abandonment fostered deep resentment, and his years of suffering hardened him. Eventually, he succumbed to death, but his soul was twisted by the corruption's influence of the beast, transforming him into a bloated, monstrous figure fueled by anger and pain. It's a sad story that keeps happening in Vastiri. The abandonment of the Maraketh people to become Faradun bred anger and resentment, which led to these situations. With Azarian gone, you approach the goddess, bound to a shrine and trapped in unending suffering. She pleads for release, her essence reduced to fragments of her former divinity. The goddess has no more followers in the city. Using fire, you grant her peace, and from her ashes, you retrieve the essence of water. The caravan moves next to the Mastodon Badlands, a barren valley scattered with the remains of creatures long extinct. The bones of Ekbab, or Bala's mighty steed, rest here, but they do not lie undisturbed. Corruption has raided Ekbab's form under the control of Iktab the Deathlord. The battle is fierce, the ancient beast's strength tested against your resolve. Upon victory, the mastodon tusks are claimed. We've got 2 out of the 3 elements. The final destination is the Valley of Titans, a desolate expanse littered with the remains of colossal beings. To proceed, you must activate 3 Titan seals scattered through the valley. Each seal unlocks a step closer to the grotto where the final relic is hidden. Within the grotto, you face Zalmarath, a corrupted titan whose immense form fills the chamber. Eventually, you do defeat him, and you get to claim the Flame Ruby. Returning to the caravan, you present the relics to Zarka. Zarka carefully combines the relics. I don't know how she does it. Duct tape, potentially. But she takes the essence of water, the mastodon tusks, and the flame of ruby, and she recreates the horn of the Vastiri. When completed, she entrusts it to you, acknowledging the effort you undertook to gather the pieces. This is an extreme honor, considering this is a Maraketh relic. With the horn in hand, returning to the Halani Gates, the sandstorm conjured by Jamanra looms ahead. At the storm's edge, Sekima Asala gives a nod of approval, signaling it is time. You sound the horn, and its ancient power fills the air. The winds shift, breaking apart the storm with a force that clears the way forward. The caravan pushes through the now open path, entering Deshar, the sacred city of the dead. Towering spires rise above the sands. Asala warns of the city's significance, emphasizing the need for caution. She assigns you the duty of confronting Jamanra while the caravan flanks the Faradun to secure the city's outer defenses. Shambren approaches you with a quiet request. She speaks of a person called Lailuma, a figure from her past who ventured to Deshar alone and never returned. Though she provides few details, her words carry the weight of longing, regret, and potentially of a lost lover. She asks you to seek the truth of what happened, should you come across any trace of Lailuma in the dunes of the spires. You enter the outskirts of Deshar, the air heavy with the weight of history and desecration. Near the entrance, an abandoned Roa bird lies tethered, its tracks leading nowhere. Could this be Lailuma's bird? As you navigate the sands, the signs of conflict grow. The Faradun have defiled the Maraketh's honored dead. Their remains are disturbed, their resting places turned into symbols of defiance. Their actions aimed at wounding the Maraketh where it hurts most. Their traditions. Amidst the ruins, you discover a corpse. The body weathered by the sands but holding onto a final message. A letter rests in their grip. Its words filled with love, regret, and acceptance of fate. It is unmistakably Lailuma. Her journey ending where the dunes meet the spires. What I'm thinking here is that she jumped off the spires. You take the letter and return to the caravan, sharing it with Shambren. She receives it silently, her grief evident. She asks for you not to read it to her. The pain would be too great. She intends to mark Lailuma's resting place discreetly, ensuring her memory will not be lost. Returning to Deshar, you press further into the city. At the summit of one spire, you find Jamanra. He stands amidst the remains of the honored dead, their bones wrapped into grotesque shapes. His words are cutting, his actions deliberate as he summons Torgul the Defiler, a monstrous bone titan. The battle is grueling. Torgul towers above, its skeletal form held together by corruption's unnatural strength. Eventually, the titan collapses, its corrupted form crumbling into the sands. The destruction of Torgul clears the way, but Jamanra has already begun to move forward, and his plans are now complete. You might have put pressure on their plans, but the beast has now eaten its fill. You return to the caravan to regroup. Asala delivers news of the Faradun's Dreadnought, a massive war caravan tearing through the Vastiri Plains. Its size and power are unprecedented, leaving devastation in its wake. The caravan now has a clear trail to follow. The caravan moves with purpose, finally closing the gap between you and the massive Faradun Dreadnought. Its scale is staggering, a war caravan crafted for destruction. Asala stands ready, Together, you leap onto the moving Dreadnought, joining the battle amidst the chaos. The Faradun forces swarm in defense, their numbers overwhelming. I died so many times here. Each step towards the heart of the Dreadnought is hard-won, the battle growing fiercer as you push forward. It's an interesting note that the Faradun caravan isn't pulled by slaves, but by beasts. At the Dreadnought's head, you confront Jamanra, his corrupted presence a stark contrast to the noble leader he once was. Beside him stands Countess Oriana, her calculating gaze fixed on you. She taunts your purpose, dismissing your efforts as futile. The beast lies chained, grotesque and growing. And for you PoE 1 players, doesn't the beast look like some kind of proto-Kitava? Anyway, Jamanra engages you in battle, his power amplified by the corruption coursing through him. Asala fights alongside you, her strikes precise and unyielding. The battle is brutal, each attack met with equal force. Oriana watches, her impatience growing. She commands Jamanra to finish the fight, her focus on the beast's escape. Realizing he is outmatched, Jamanra takes a desperate step. With a single swing of his corrupted blade, he severs the head of the Dreadnought, detaching the section holding the beast and Oriana. The severed portion begins to move, carrying Oriana and the beast away into the dunes. You and Jamanra tumble into the sands, where the battle resumes. Yet, as the battle drags on, his strength wanes. Finally, you strike the decisive blow, bringing him to his knees. Jamanra's final words are filled with defiance, his belief in Oriana's victory unshaken. Asala steps forward, delivering the final strike, a swift and honorable death, cutting off his head in accordance with Maraketh tradition. She acknowledges the weight of the moment, her actions aimed at bridging the divide between the Faradun and the Maraketh. After all, she could have given him a very unhonorable death and created more of a divide, or kept it in any case. The caravan regroups as the sands settle. Shambrin reflects on Jamanra's death, recognizing the tragedy of his rise and fall. The Faradun, now leaderless, begin preparations to transport his body to Deshar for a sky burial, a gesture approved by Asala to honor his past despite his corruption. Which is quite nice, considering Jamanra was the one to defile Deshar in the first place, although Jamanra really is just a product of his upbringing and his environment. Risu speaks of unity, her perspective shaped by the events that have unfolded. She sees hope in the possibility of a shared future, where the Maraketh and Faradun might find common ground. The Hooded One waits at a nearby shrine dedicated to Garukan, the Queen of Winds. The battle is over, but the pursuit of Oriana and the beast continues. In a way, we have failed. Deshar may have been secured, but the fight against Oriana is far from over. As you approach the shrine of Garukan, the air is still, the silence broken only by the faint whisper of the wind. As a quick reminder, Garukan is the divinity born from Orbala, the warrior with the horn, remember? The Hooded One stands before the monument. He begins to speak, the guarded tone of past conversations replaced by one of somber honesty. His words reveal what you suspected but dared not voice: his identity. With a burst of dark smoke, the Hooded One's ethereal guise dissolves, leaving behind his true form. He is Sin, the thief of virtue, a god burdened by his failures. Sin confesses his creation of the beast, an act born of hubris that has now spiraled beyond control. His voice carries the gravity of centuries of regret laid bare. Sin explains the intricacies of divinity, the trap of being shaped by the faith of mortals. He recounts his time in the city of Keth, where he loved and was loved in return. He speaks of Garukan, his late wife, a relationship once filled with warmth, now remembered with cold regret. Divinity, he says, stripped her of her humanity, leaving an idol in her place. His daughter, a reflection of their shared legacy, became another casualty of his choices. His betrayal of her, an act he believed necessary to save the world, still haunts him. There's more information about that in Path of Exile 1 if you guys want to go and play that campaign. Okay, let's pause quickly to talk about Sin. Again, we can't go too deep for this video, but here's what you need to know about Sin at this point in time. Sin was born alongside his twin brother Innocence, and is a deeply complex figure in Rayclast's history. While Innocence was ambitious and driven by a desire to ascend to godhood, his initial attempts were unsuccessful, hindered by his small follower base. To overcome this, Innocence turned his followers against Sin, vilifying him and channeling their hatred to fuel his own divine ascension, and paradoxically, Sin's as well. As a result, Innocence became lauded and golden, celebrated as a god of purity and light, while Sin was cast as black as coal, shunned and burdened with the image of a fallen outcast. Centuries ago, Sin sought to free humanity from the oppressive rule of the gods, whom he saw as tyrants. In his ambition, he created the Beast, a powerful entity meant to sever the connection between gods and mortals and grant humanity's independence. However, because of the intervention of mortals that wanted to control this corruption, the Beast unleashed corruption, devastating the land and warping life itself. This unintended catastrophe filled Sin with regret, driving him to confront the consequences of his actions and attempt to right the wrongs caused by his rebellion. Eventually, an Exile, that's you in Path of Exile 1 by the way, destroyed the Beast. The Beast had served as a tether that suppressed the gods of Rayclast, severing their direct influence on humanity. Its destruction released the suppression, allowing dormant or diminished gods to reassert their power and presence in the world. Does it all make sense for now? I know it's a lot to take in, but bear with me. We're nearly done with Act 2. Sin then shifts the conversation to the present crisis. This new beast has grown too powerful for any mortal form to contain. He speaks of the Val Empire, an ancient civilization that once mastered corruption, wielding it to achieve great heights before it led to their destruction. Sin believes the answers lie in the ruins of Exile, a city buried in the jungle. There, he hopes to find a weapon or some kind of knowledge to counter the beast. Before departing, you meet with Sekema Asala. She reflects on the events with Jamanra, her decision to grant him an honorable death, and the hope that it might mend the divide between the Faradun and the Maraketh. An honorable thing to do. She speaks of unity and the choices she will offer the surviving Faradun, to join the Maraketh or remain as outcasts. Her resolve to lead the Akaras towards a new chapter is clear. On top of this, our storyteller, Zarka, has decided that Risu should be the next storyteller when Zarka eventually passes. Now, Asala offers the caravans assistance to take you to the edge of the desert. From there, the journey to the Val jungle begins. The shrine of Garukan fades into the distance as the caravan moves forward. The Vastiri Plains stretch behind you. Ahead lies the unknown, a world of ancient ruins, forgotten secrets, and the ever-growing threat of the beast. You'll go with Sin to the ruins of Exile to find a weapon against corruption, while the caravan will keep tracking the beast. What a script, what a story, what a video. I'm having a fantastic time with this. How about you? I hope you enjoyed this one. I'm so sorry it took so long to make. As you know, this game is vast. If you're still here, please share this video on socials and give me a sub and a thumbs up. It means a lot. And start looking forward to Act 3. Take care, Exiles, and we'll see you in the next one.